Welcome to another episode of I Am Nano.
Putting the I in I Am Nano, I am your host, Irfani.
And I am your other host, Monica. And today we're going to dive right into part 2 of Bruno's interview. Let's go.
Yeah. So say a student wants to go to graduate school and people like me who are still in grad school, what kind of advice would you have for us?
In terms of?
In terms of just like our journey, and if someone is interested into going to graduate school.
Don't get yourself stuck in frustrations of what you thought that would be about. So, I thought the PhD was about, I don't know, this, and then you had a thought, and it's not. Well, get over it or quit. I mean, there's some things that are easy to say, but they're hard to do, right? And I'm not saying that I was exceptionally good at that, right? But that's one thing. Yeah. The other thing is, there's a lot of, unfortunately, and that's the case, happens everywhere, but in PhD, in the academic environment, because of this very complex ecosystem that we were talking about, and there's a lot of, in Spanish, I would have a really beautiful word for that.
Oh yeah, you can say it. It's okay. Go for it.
Extorsión psicolaboral. That would be something like psycho work-related extortion, right? Blackmailing. And that's like, okay, and like questions about if you will deserve the PhD or not, if you did enough or not. These questions are a little bit complicated, right? And then you always are answering them to yourself with an external viewer, right? So the voice of someone else that is not you. And I think that's very problematic. I don't know if I have a solution to that, because it's very case dependent. But so I think many people in many fields, you can start to create fantasies of reality. Not publishing that Nature paper is not the worst things that's going to happen to you. It's okay. I mean, it's actually almost completely irrelevant, probably.
Yeah, that's true.
When you come out of that fish tank, then you will look at it from the outside and say, I mean, the world has much bigger problems, right?
Yeah.
Much bigger. And I think some people get trapped in that fantasy, in that illusion. They live a fictitious world in the PhD. And this environment is very good at creating, like illusions of asphyxiation. And so, I mean, for pre-graduate students, I think I would be very inquisitive with the place you're going. Very inquisitive. Like almost, not advising to take anything to make harm to some people, but be very inquisitive. Like, are people happy here? You hear stories of everything, not so good things. You hear stories everywhere, right? So I would be very careful with the environment you go. I heard not so very nice things around. I would strongly recommend that, to be very inquisitive about the emotional well-being and health. I mean, you can also look at statistics, which I always recommend. Look at statistics. Yesterday, I was looking at a Nature article about it's called PhD, the tortuous truth. I think that's the name. And
we'll link that in the description. Don't worry.
Tortuous truth.
I think that was the name of the article, and you can look at percentages of levels of satisfaction, levels of depression. I think that another thing that should be taken into consideration is you are most likely, if you're doing grad school, I don't know how it goes in US and Canada, but for us, you're most likely between 25 and 30, roughly, right? That's an age range.
Yeah.
Those are years of high mental plasticity. And you don't want to waste them with like depressions because of whatever. And so I think you should appreciate that these years are very worthy. There's like some mental plasticity that you're probably never getting back, right? So, all musicians accomplish, most of them accomplish, amazing things in their 20s. I mean, this works a little bit different because we go on studies and it's a much more rational endeavor, but still.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that. fabulous. Like I've learned so much from you. That was
Yeah,
very
thanks for all the
insightful.
advice.
Yeah.
I don't sometimes I don't
and-
really think about it like that, but you're very right.
Yeah.
I've heard of grad students having their group meetings at 9 a.m. on a Sunday with their professors, and then they have to go back to work and work on the manuscript.
Yeah, and also be very inquisitive when you ask, like, okay, how does it go here? Do you want that? I also think that so you should look even way beyond. So especially if you're in US and Canada, if you're actually in Europe, you have to look at the other side also, right? Or if you, or how does it happen in Asia? I don't know, in Russia, I don't know. Just I think so that you know where you're standing, because otherwise you enter again these illusions, these desert illusions of reality that you think you're living, and that's not true. It's, you know, you might be told, yeah, but in every PhD you have to go on a Sunday in the night to meet like whoever. Well, not necessarily. There's places where that happens, there's places where that doesn't happen. So maybe if I compact what I'm saying is generalizations can be useful. However, you can find by asking your own individual fit.
Very well put.
Right? I mean, if you want like another advice for like guys that want to decide if they go to grad school or not, many people get offered a PhD position in the place where they did their master thesis or something, and they feel honored. Well, you're probably a great guy, but at the same time, you have to put in the equation that for that professor that offer you, for him, it's really risk-free to offer you that, because, I mean, he knows you versus hiring someone that he or she, or I don't know how it goes. They don't know who you are. So these are two options: hiring you, who they know who you are, and someone that they don't have a clue. So, I mean, and this summed up with the idea of that you can be there forever can be very, like, that's an entering trick and an exit trick. So, which ends up making you being there forever. So the exit trick, right? And I think you're in charge of saying, you know, this finishes here. Well, the problem is, you know, what I was saying about the extorsiones psicolaborales that happen in every type of job, right? Because they know what people's needs are, and then they can exploit you from your needs. But be very clear about things. You are in charge of finishing your own thesis, in the sense that of putting the end line. Because if it would be for them, they would keep you there forever.
Yeah.
I think so. I think in relation to what we were talking about, you know, desert illusions. How is the expression what's the proper expression? Like, you know, the illusions in a desert where you're really thirsty and then you.
Yeah.
So I think another part of the illusion there is what I always felt is to mix up passion with desperation, and I think many people show themselves as passionate, but they are actually very desperate. They are just, you know, when I think if I try to think about the difference now, it's like when you're passionate about something, kind of decisions get taken by themselves. You don't when you're desperate, no, you're running, you're thinking, you're going here and there, and so I think distinguishing between desperation and passion is important, because when I think of some people in some situations, then I see more desperation than passion, and the mix-up can be very toxic, because you think, but I'm passionate, but I'm suffering like crazy, but I'm passionate, But I think that there's, as we talk about, there's this very complex ecosystem of grad school and the PhD, and I think that this generates like so if I simplify the story to, like, Nietzsche went in the search for his, and also these PhDs in who knows when, right? They went for the search of truth, and we have all this imagery built around and think that we're going into that ecosystem, but we're not going into that ecosystem. But there's still like debris from that, or elements remaining, and these elements can be used to create like some sort of ethics that, well, you should, because you're doing it for, mankind or something. Well, you can do that, and it's very noble, but double check if you're doing it for mankind or if you're doing it because you want to publish high, right? I mean, so then there's like a lot of conceptual mix-up, I think, in this, and there's this generation of I don't know how to call them, like nobleness ethics or something, that they're very nice and very ideal and very platonic, and they entail really good values. But are you really in that ethic, or it's just an illusion?
That's great. That's something we should all think about, actually. Are we actually good people doing it for the greater good, or selfishly,
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah, it's like a constant conflict though, because on the one hand, when you're doing PhD, they're like, okay, you have to publish this, you have to publish that, and then in your mind, you're kind of, sometimes, at least for me, I'm twisting it. Maybe, oh yeah, what I'm doing is good for the world, but at the same time, I get the benefit of publishing a paper, type of thing. So it's like that.
Yeah, I think this problem is not uncommon across disciplines. I think musicians have the same, right? They want to transmit a message and everything, but they say, well, look, really interesting what you did, but the song, if you want it to be a radio hit, has to be 3 minutes, because people have that attention span.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, but actually that riff is really cool, and the arpeggio, and yeah, well, so sure that you have to compromise, and I guess that's an art by itself.
Yeah.
Great analogy. So wise. They're so smart.
Yeah. Thanks, Roberto.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
By my procrastinator brain.
No, you're
No,
brilliant.
I think we should all take some time every day just to like question ourselves and ask these questions. Reflect.
I guess you would go crazy.
And okay, so that's all the questions we regularly had for you. Now we do have a bonus question if you have the time. Can we ask it?
Yeah.
Okay, so our bonus question is, since we're a nano-based podcast, where do you see the future of nanotech?
Right. That's a difficult one. I was trying to think about.
Sorry, we just added it. It's bonus.
But what's interesting is, like, I studied in some nanophysics labs in Argentina, and I think it's really good what we were doing, and I'm really interested. At the same time, I think that when I looked at nanotechnology, so when I was trying to look for my PhD and I looked at nanotechnology and its potential and stuff like that, every technology goes through what you could call winters and summers, right? The winter is when no one talks about it, no one knows what it is, very few people research it, and summer is like it's a super hype and everyone thinks it will be the future. And so this happened also to wearables, right? Wearables, this happened to artificial intelligence, right? It's not new. So they go through these phases of winters and summers. This happens also to genetics, right? So, and I think I read a lot of promise about nanotech, and I don't see it happening. I don't know where is it. I've been reading about the promise of nanotech for a long time, and I don't see it happening. So there's many options there. One is that I'm not well informed, which partially it's true, because I don't follow every trend very carefully. Another option is that people have to publish a lot that this is very promising so that they get a grant. So then you get a bias, and then you get a summer like for free. And the other one, it is that it is coming, but it does so not in the ways that it was promised. It does so in much more subtle ways. So yesterday I was reading that we now have like endoscopies where you can swallow a pill that is a camera, and this will measure, like they will take images throughout 5 to 8 hours of your whole GI tract, and it's really amazing. And then you would, well, maybe it's not like how they promise, nanotechnology, now drug delivery will be, well, but there was a lot of effort to reach that. right? And there's a lot of the components that they depended on these nanotechnology developments. So I think the answer there is that when you think of the promises, they come in a very much more subtle way. These prophecies get slowly fulfilled. About the future itself of nanotech, I mean, I think that there's an interesting time coming because of artificial intelligence that now, this is really, you could call it hot. The hot topic. I think that the agencies. So healthcare has a lot of stakeholders. I'm thinking about healthcare, nanotech in healthcare, right? Because that's what I'm thinking. I don't know in general, or maybe I'm not in the material side of it and so on. So when I think of in the direction of healthcare, I think that healthcare has a lot of stakeholders. It's a very complex ecosystem as compared to others. And you have regulatory agencies. And regulatory agencies have been very conservative about clinical trials and randomized trials and all these ways. And I think if AI would do some good, apart from, let's see if it works or not, but one good that it will make, I think, is that these agencies are starting to ask themselves, okay, are these ways of validating medical technologies the best ways? Why have they been the only way for so long? So I think that if these structures start to open up a little bit better, then it could be an interesting opportunity for new nano medtech, if you want to call it that way, to find faster ways into patients and into clinics. So yeah, and I also think that generally, because of the huge emphasis on interdiscipline that there's now, then you can get really hardcore, maybe nanophysics, nanomaterials developments, and then get them really integrated with biologics and get them to be useful. Because this is a little bit what, funnily, we come back to what we started talking about, right? This mindset mixing that diseases don't know, discipline. So this mindset mixing, I think it's happening better and better, and so I see a little bit that as very positive.
Yeah, I agree with you with the healthcare aspect, because it does take at least, I think, 5 years minimum for a product to really get out into the general public. So it is very time consuming for a good reason, but also, is there like a more efficient way to do it?
Yeah, I think that if you see like companies themselves, with all these agile methodologies. Again, in this ivory tower, in this bottle, I think there's a lot of a complete disregard and unfair disregards for soft skills that we are. And it's not, and when I mean soft skills, I don't mean about networking to get advantage over something. I mean really understanding the psychology of people. What's their history? Why do they think that way? Or, for example, leadership. I don't know how it is in some places, but this is, industry has put a lot of effort on checking how leadership should look like, and how collaborations should look like, and how meetings should be efficient, and these sort of things. So I think that this is something that, even though maybe grad school will not give you per se, you can pursue by yourself. There's a lot of systems of how to have an efficient day, time boxing, I don't know. So now I have to catch my backward thought again. And I think, I caught it. So I think if you look at companies, they have been doing this, like, how can we be more efficient? How can we have efficient meetings? And you cannot disregard like 60 years of psychological science. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I think this is somehow getting extrapolated to how medicine works. And I think, especially now with the pandemic, that they had to basically, approve everything. It's not called approved, right? It's called
emergency use authorization in the US.
Authorization. So, that we need to stay somehow dynamic, right? And what happens with multi-resistant bacteria and stuff like this? Are you going to do 6-year clinical trials to check out if some drug works? So I think this will speed up the pace of things, and that their nanotech could come in a bit faster. And I think at the same time, I'm thinking of this in an analogy of like these trees that are very convoluted branches and they are so on like this, right? And imagine these three a little bit opening up, leaving some holes, some room for air, for spacing, for light to come in and get the tree a bit more developed. So the same will happen if this way of evaluating medical technologies changes in such a way that we can do personalized clinical trials, if you want to call it that way. And yeah, well, maybe for, I don't know, a lot of people, some tech didn't work, but for other it did. And maybe there's a significant causal connection between why it worked in some and why it didn't in others, and why not use it in the world who did, if you can find this causal connection. And so, yeah.
Anything to add to that, Irfan? Yeah, we're picking Bruno's brain for everything.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm baffled by all these insights that you're telling me, because I definitely did not think of the things that we do in PhD the way you did. Because when I did PhD, I knew I wanted to do this field, but I didn't think of it in terms of, its application to the whole entire world and its implications. So thank you so much for all this insight that you're,
Yeah.
I'm speechless in a way, because I'm trying to also think about, reflect on it as well.
So like the disclaimer here is, right, I'm an overthinker. So I have a lot
No,
of
but
thoughts.
it's really helpful here. No, seriously, I think I need to do that more.
I know the overthinking terrain can get really complicated sometimes and be not very pleasant, but I think the game of thinking about the big picture and the small picture at the same time is a really interesting one and a tough to play. I think you mentioned a word that for me is the word field, right?
Mhm.
The word field is not, it passes as innocent, but it's not so innocent, right? The field says that we can be from here till there, and outside it's someone else, and so many of the arguments is I want to work on this field, and I ask myself, do you want to work on that field, or do you want to do something that just happens to be on that field,
Right.
by someone who named the field? So I would kind of clarify myself that I would say so. I mean, the difficulty with all of this, my brain contact struggle between many parts, between many little individuals that ones want to like define things, the other ones want to sit in the divan, right? Like to just think. And so connecting like these two worlds, is the big picture and the small picture, is sometimes a bit torturous, but it's interesting.
So thank you for making me think about it, though. I definitely am gonna ponder about this for the.
What's your so what's your status, or what are you thinking?
Well, because before I used to study physiology, because at first I wanted to be a doctor, but then after spending some time in the hospitals, I realized it wasn't for me. But I still wanted to be in the medical field, but I was more interested in the technologies that helps people take care of themselves. And that's where I got into the whole sensors. I mean, I'm ashamed to say, but back when I started, I was inspired by Theranos. Do you remember that company? Yeah, I was inspired by that company. So it turned out to be like a whole fraud. And then she was talking about like nanotainers. And then I was like, oh, these tiny things can solve so many issues. I mean, now I realize that's really not the case. But like how you just mentioned, the field, like how you want to solve the problem. It just so happens that I'm going through the approach of nanotechnology, but it's not the only way. If I really want to solve the problem, there could be other ways that could involve nanotech, but that's not the only way.
Yeah, I think that in that sense, you make me think with this Theranos. There's a company, I can make them advertisement for free and they're getting money. It's called Omni. It's called Omni. It's in Paris, and in one of the pitches they say Theranos had the vision, we have the technology, so you can go and check them out if you want to move to Paris after your PhD.
Yeah.
And but I think that you should also not dismiss your your good intuitions about like, I like this, right? So if you really like that, the problem is the word feel sometimes, but if you like it, just go for it. I mean, I think, yeah, you're making me think as well, right?
Good.
I think,
But the big thing, sorry, just the big thing that I got out of this conversation is just thinking of the small picture whilst thinking of the big picture at the same time. Because I tend to get so sucked into my own project and
yeah.
like this, I just want to finish this right now, and then I just don't spend time thinking of everything else.
Yeah, well, I think there's phases, definitely, right? There's like more opening up phases, there's like pushing it through phases, and there's like wrapping up phases. You also said that you're in a moment where you're finishing, so you need to finish. So
Mhm.
so that your energies to be like the finishing energies and not like the opening up new worlds energies, which doesn't mean that you have to shut down all your awareness about your surrounding. But I think that one of the, because from what you said about like, focusing and thinking this will solve it, so sure, you have to trust something. But I think when we think about complex systems, sometimes I think about it as that Gaudí, the architect, did some little systems of weights. He put little sandbags and connected them with pulleys to calculate weights, and one weight would move all the others. And I think there's like a constant misconception in the human mind, like across everything, that you move one thing and only that thing moves. So I always give the example of like, if you do a recipe and you want it less sweet, so then you say I put less sugar. Well, it doesn't work that way, because you're changing the total weight, you're changing the fluidity, you're changing the reaction that can, the caramelization reaction that can happen. You're changing a lot of things. And so the same thing is with that. When you focus too much on one thing, I am more, I like more systemic ways of thinking than acute ways of thinking. And so, yeah, that's a bit like why I say the things I say.
No, thank you though. Thank you, seriously.
Anything else you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap things up?
I think if you find yourself in a situation of choosing an undergrad or a grad school or not, or if you're already in a grad school, you're probably already in a very privileged position in general. And I think me, myself, and in general, we lose a little bit of awareness of that. And then you can add up to that the state of the world right now in the last years. It's quite okay, right? So I think, sure, there's a lot of problems, and the world will always have problems. That's part of history, but we have certain stability that we're not compared to like when Romans were going and conquering everything, right? So if you look at all the philosophy from Confucius, is he called in English? He was very frustrated because the wars were towns were slaughtering each other just for no reason. So I don't, we are not, so let's come back to what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is we are in a really exciting moment. There's investment all over. There's technology. Science has been put, as at the front of society. Science and technology, how important they are, and so on. So I think, I don't know. I'm not sure if this is very concrete what I'm saying, but be excited.
Exciting is good. Yeah, the fourth industrial revolution, right?
Yeah.
I mean, be excited, but don't be reductionist, and don't be too much of a positivist, I guess. not optimist, not optimist. I mean positive, like thinking that science will solve everything and it's the only.
Right.
Very well said.
Just like you said, interdisciplinary of everything. Yeah. It's a combination of all the different sectors working together.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to get sometimes a bit generic and philosophical, but yeah, that's my Achilles heel.
We need that. We need that sometimes. We need that. I mean, it's PhD. It's doctor in philosophy. You gotta think of philosophy sometimes. Yeah.
True. Philosophy doctor, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this is when yeah, when you think about it, like, yeah, Doctor of Philosophy, they already lied to you twice in the title. You're not going to be a doctor, and it's not about philosophy. So it already started the other way around, huh?
Yep. There you go. Well said. Yeah, I think we're PhD twins too. Like, I think you defended like the day before me or a few hours before me.
True, Dr. Monica.
Yeah. Well, we're both, yeah, in the same boat. Yeah.
How was that?
Interesting. It was interesting because it was all online, so I did it from home.
Yeah, for me as well.
Yeah. It was like, oh yeah, you passed. Okay, bye. And then everyone signs off, and you're alone in the room.
I guess Dr. Monica, I guess we have made the same mistakes anyway.
Yeah.
And
we're both ending up in startups, maybe, you know.
Exactly. So I think that all the philosophical stuff is just interesting for inside my brain sometimes.
It's good to get it out and, you know, share it, because there might be other people that are doing the same thing. I think the interview right before you, he was telling us the story of how he almost quit his PhD halfway through, and, you know, but then he was like, okay, I'm going to take a break and then come back. So everyone has different stories and all that.
Yeah.
I not only think that everyone has different stories, but also everyone has different stories to tell their own story, ways to tell their own story, right? I guess I'm now trying to focus a lot on most of the positive things. You know, I came to a city, so I chose this lab because it was really special, right? And it was, but I came to a city that I disliked throughout all the way, and that caused me, you know, to have a lot of negative emotions all the time, constantly. And so I always think, okay, well, I should have matched a little bit more. You know, it's a really noble endeavor that you want to go and do what you like, which is fine. But I'm always asking myself, well, but you could also have incorporated a little bit your other sensibilities, right? So again, like in this complex system, don't choose because of one thing. I mean, you can try to integrate everything. I mean, this is really difficult. I mean, I guess I didn't do, yeah, and for sure, we had really tough times, right? When the projects failed, when things looked like they were never going to work, maybe some never worked, right? Or difficult relationships. This is all part of the game. I'm now just focusing more on the positive story. And also, more importantly, I'm following the Klaus-Dieter Franz principle.
Okay.
It is answer the question and nothing else. But I guess I'm overdoing it currently.
This is great. It's the Klaus principle. Very good.
I think of that advice like 4 times a day since.
Wow.
Because it's not only about answering questions, the question and nothing else. It's in life about, like, you know, just what is relevant and no extra information, because too much information makes me go crazy.
And for context, who is Klaus-Dieter Franz?
For context, Klaus-Dieter Franz. So Dr. Monica and I met at the Mark Innovation Cup 2020, and we were together part of the team lithography, and Klaus-Dieter Franz was one of our coaches. He's a wonderful human being.
Fabulous.
Wonderful human being who happens to also have invented the metallic pigments for cars, which he explained in great detail. And he was our coach. Also a bit of a philosophical coach, Klaus, right?
Yes.
In a lot of senses. And I think of his comment like 4 times a day. It's amazing.
Yeah, and story time with Dr. Klaus was the best.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for everything and your time today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Bruno, for letting us take your time and picking your brain and sharing all your insights that it will definitely make me think for the rest of the day today.
Rest of my life, every day. You're going to be the next Klaus. The next Klaus.
The next Klaus.
Yeah, we have all learned a lot, but thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right. And that's it for today. Take care, everyone.
And stay curious.